Good evening and welcome to day 2 of the 46th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival. My name is Natalia Hunter-Young and I'm the International Associate Programmer for Africa, the Middle East, and Black Diaspora here at TIFF. And it is my great, great pleasure to welcome you back to the cinema. Back to the cinema. For the North American premiere of Saul Williams and Anisia Uzeyman's Neptune Frost. As you join us today, we encourage you to reflect on the land that you are on and its history. We are located on the treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. This territory is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. TIFF is grateful to continue to work on this land. This is the opening night film for TIFF's Wavelengths program, which spotlights the best in avant-garde cinema and is lead programmed by Andrea Picard. Neptune Frost tells of a generation of dreamers escaping the psychosocial wreckage of colonization, genocide, and the residual brutalities of global extractive industries. What you are about to experience is fearless in its message, music, and aesthetic challenges. TIFF would like to thank our lead sponsor, Bell, and our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oreal Paris, and Visa, for their continued support. Thank you to our major supporters, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto. Thank you to the Ontario Cultural Attractions Fund for supporting the expanded activities at Ontario Place this year. And as a part of TIFF's commitment to engaging youth in the festival's programming, this film has been selected for the next generation of film lovers by the TIFF Next Wave Committee. The TIFF Next Wave Committee is supported by the Slate Family Foundation Learning Fund. TIFF Next Wave programming is supported by the Shawn Mendes Foundation, the City of Toronto, and the Ontario Arts Council. Thank you to our members and donors. You helped us transform the way that people see the world through film. This film is eligible for the Amplify Voices Award presented by Canada Goose and the People's Choice Award. Vote for your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. We would like to thank Creative Arts Agency, CAA, for providing us with the film, and a sincere thank you to our co-programmer tonight, Manifesto. I know there's some Manifesto crew in the audience, so thank you to Manifesto. And of course, I can't leave this stage without thanking the countless staff and volunteers with whom we would not be back in the cinemas today, and this festival would not be happening, so major thanks to them. All right, Saul Williams is a musician, poet, writer, actor, and director from New York. He co-wrote and starred in Slam, which won the Sundance Film Festival's Grand Jury Prize for Dramatic Film. His many acting credits include A Midsummer's Night's Dream and Akila's Escape, the latter of which premiered at the festival. Neptune Frost is his directorial debut. Anisia Uzeyman is a Rwandan filmmaker, actor, and playwright. Her acting credits include Aujourd'hui, Ayiti Mon Amour, and Dream States, which she also directed. Neptune Frost is her latest film. Please welcome to the stage Saul Williams and Anisia Uzeyman. You're welcome to say a few words if you'd like, and before we get started.
Okay. Do you want to see it?
Hey.
Well, we are absolutely thrilled to share this moment with each and every one of you, to be here on this land, in this space, with this film, in this moment. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, It's absolutely amazing. Ichirambe Chabose. If there is some Rwandans in the room. And yes, we wish you a beautiful, beautiful trip. Yes, come with us.
Unanimous gold mine.
Yeah. Please stick around for the Q&A. Please join me in welcoming back Saul Williams and Anisia Uzeyman. Saul and Anisia, congratulations, first and foremost. We have had a conversation that you all should watch. It's on YouTube now, as of now. But I would love, I know that this journey began with the music for you both, and I would love if you could talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, this film was always conceived of as a graphic novel and a musical, stage play initially. In fact, Anisia and I did a residency at Banff to work on this stage play for this back in 2014. And we met producers who said, I really love this story, but I'd be more interested in investing if it were a film. And it took a moment for us to dive in with that idea in mind. But regardless, I've been working on it that long. And for most of the story, the music came first. The ideas for characters, the voices of the characters, all of this stuff, it was so much about creating the soundscape, the atmosphere of Digitaria and of the story in order to pull the story out of it. And so.
And the wonderful artists in the film, please tell us about these artists and musicians.
Well, yeah, they're amazing. It's so all those actors are, poets, singers, dancers, choreographers. I mean, all in their own rights, and so they are part of that very glowing, amazing young scene in Kigali, Rwanda. They are like also a part of them are from Burundi. Mataluza, psychology, the drummers are young people that came to Rwanda in 2015. When there was the protest and it became dangerous in Burundi, and they took refuge in Rwanda, and so we met them in 2016, and so yeah, they're all like amazing artists and bright talent from the country that we met gradually while casting the film. We went to see their performances. We went to see, their rehearsals and all of that. And so, yeah, they are amazing artists in their own, rights.
And we wish we could have them here. Unfortunately, with COVID and visa restrictions and what have you, it's been somewhat of a nightmare. The festival run of this film in relation to getting our talent to be able to leave their country into other countries and visas to be processed in time. So, yeah, that's been the hardest part of the journey so far.
I know their stories of migration really played a part in developing the music and the poetry in the film. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, yeah, as Anisia mentioned, the one, I mean, some of the writing, occurred through communicating with the cast in Rwanda. So the Burundian refugees like Trésor, who plays psychology, and Kaya, who plays Mataluza, when they were telling the stories of what was happening in Burundi before they left, for example, you know, it was them who initially were like, you know, first they cut the radio, then they cut the television, they locked down the internet. All the stuff that's in the music actually was composed, not all of it, but a lot of it was composed out of conversations that we had, you know, and then further on, you know, it's not just migration. I mean, the stories and the intersection of stories and I guess the politics of the film have a lot to do with when it was born, and it was born at a moment where Anisia and I were shooting, we're both acting in a film in Senegal during the time that there were protests against the government there, and this is 2011. And this is the same time as the Arab Spring, or right around the time of the Arab Spring. There's all these talks about hacks, about WikiLeaks. There's also, at that time already on the continent, a number of anti-gay laws that are being passed then, primarily because of American evangelists arriving on the continent and saying, we'd love to give money to blah, 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 if you would try this law out over here, you know. There was so much, and personally, I wanted to, you know, find a way to talk about all of these different stories and realities at once without preaching, essentially. And the idea was like, well, if it's fiction, you know, we could definitely paint a story that inhabits all of these realities, and so it's born out of that. And of course, migration plays a huge part of that. It's a lot. Yeah.
Why don't we go to the audience? Any questions? Over here, go ahead. I'll repeat so that everyone can hear.
First of all, bravo, Anisia from Rwanda.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I love about this film is this is so different. I grew up here in Canada, obviously. This is so different from anything that I learned about Rwanda. You know, a lot of the subjects you tackle, gender fluidity, living under an authoritarian government, everything is so, like, this seems like taboo almost for somebody, for Rwanda, you know? So I just want to know, like, what possessed you to tackle this? Like, where did this idea come from?
So the audience member was talking about, is from Rwanda, and noticed that the film brings something that they have never seen reflected in kind of representations of Rwanda. And what possessed you to be so brave in tackling these incredibly complex topics?
I like the story that you tell about when we were in Senegal. The kids, you know, would have their headphones, their Beats headphone on them, and then run to rehearse their samba, right? The drum, the traditional drum and dancing. And so that kind of, you know, collage of those two times and two moments and two different, you know, storytelling actually put together was kind of very magical and very inspiring. That's a story that Saul tells a lot about how he was perceiving on the continent that marriage between very ancient things,
ancient technology
and modern technology. And so I do think that in Rwanda that is also occurring, right? And that there is, even though it may be part of tales, fairy tales, but those stories about gender fluidity, for instance, exist. If you talk to elders, they're gonna tell you about, oh, it makes me think about that story, about that, a little child that grew up, and we had to, dress that in boy, so there was no danger, and etc., etc. There is many stories in the horns, and etc. And so I do think that Rwanda has that very, very inspiring and interesting connection between the background, the stories, the mythologies, the imaginations, and the future, the technology of it. The drums, when we think that we come from drums, is something, right? And so I like what you have to say about drums, also about the coding, about the fact that here, maybe you can tell that.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so much in terms of drumming, like just the idea of these ancient codes and codes of communication and how the drum was used for that, and the sort of like, all the way up to and through modern programming, and so, but the relationship of the drum to Rwanda, to Burundi, all of these things, and like Anisia said, these the interaction between the old and the new, and of course it's not necessarily specific only to Rwanda. That this interaction between the old and the new, and old worlds and new worlds. There are ways, there are times when we've been in like Istanbul, and once again you're in a place where you're like, wow, the old and the new and these worlds intersect. But the specificity in relation to Rwanda and Burundi, in this story, also comes from my own inspiration of, through Anisia, interacting and communicating with a generation of people who were basically thinking and developing ideas in ways that I hadn't considered, because of the binary coding that came with my Western programming. And there's something to be said about being, pushed beyond the binary and to think beyond that, and that was a huge part of the inspiration. In terms of taboo, I don't know.
But I think it was also interesting to go into that direction, because then you have the coltan, right? The story that you wanted to talk about, and that is also specific to that region at large. And there is a way of the exploitation of that mineral is, is made in an ancient way. In a way, it's analog, right? It's like people mining.
In which people mine and what have you. The exploitation of the workers is analog mining. The mining practices are analog.
But the end of this mineral is, technology.
Right.
And is,
so the irony that exists between that sort of like modern technology based on analog exploitation, and so once again that region, Rwanda, Congo, Burundi, that region and that mineral, all of that,
We're possessed by a lot.
We're possessed by a lot. We're possessed by a lot. But, we should also say that, we were also blessed in this film with the appearance, with the first screen debut of the beloved singer of Rwanda,
Cécile Karyebwa, who is like making her debut at 74, who is an icon, an icon of Rwanda. She's a poet, singer, and it's beautiful to have, that relationship to time through her, with those young, people that talks about those technology, and to have her there. It's
so there's a dialogue between the ages and the generations and what have you as well. But there's a lot to be inspired by in Rwanda.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a high hand up here. Go ahead.
I
Unanimous gold mine.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful.
Anisia here, yes.
That was a beautiful. Oh. Yes. Yes. Connections being made. I won't try to repeat, but connections being made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have another? Okay, yeah, up here. Go ahead. Can you talk about your choice to break form in the way that you did in the film?
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, you know, me, I'm a fan of that Maya Angelou quote where she's like, any artist should write with the urgency of what they would write if somebody were holding a gun in their mouth. You know, there's room for us to entertain, you know, different approaches to narrative. You know, there's a million ways to tell a story. You know, they don't all have to begin and be told in the same way. And as, you know, the exploitation of or the industry surrounding, you know, cinema, like the industry surrounding music, you know, for exploitation might make certain demands. And it's not that we're, you know, anti-reaching people or touching people. We just know that people are way more interesting than the shit that they're fed half the time. That people are way more smart than, you know, the gatekeepers would believe. And so we need you, actually, in those regards to remind, you know, us and each other that, yeah, it's you know, like it doesn't have to, we don't have to be told everything and beat over the head with everything in the same way in order for it to touch us, in order for it to reach us. And a lot of times, you know, like with music, you know, that might be a given at times, you know, where you can hear something and go, I don't know why. There's room for that. I don't know why it touched me, but it touched me, you know. And in that sense, it's a beautiful medium, you know, to dance, you know, with images and narrative and so I guess the fight and yeah, maybe I would term it as a fight, or you know, to stay true to the ideas that we had, and it was, you know, it was like that in every step, right? Because of course there were those who would be like, yeah, but you can't have the film in Kinyarwanda. I mean, that's gonna, you know, do you know how many people you're alienating? And we're like, do you know how many people will get to hear Kinyarwanda for the first time? You know? And with everything, it's that. It's like, why are you looking at it that way? Like, I want to experience the maximum in this lifetime, and not just bullshit like I never danced naked on a rainbow, you know, like like amazing shit, like the possibility of talking about the things that we deem important in public spaces, being heard, you know, having those things acknowledged, you know, like, yeah, let's talk about the fact that the majority of the mining companies that operate on the continent are headquartered in Toronto right here. How many of you knew that? Hello. Hello. I mean, half the time it's that, just sneak shit in. Let's sneak that shit in. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that is you're talking about alienation, and it's true that the desire was for us for us was to share also new faces with you, new faces, people that you don't see usually, and my work was to show them to you in ways that you may not be often seeing them, and also in those regards, like, yeah, in traditional films, it's true that there are choices made that are said to be like, okay, that's what people want or are used to or are referencing. And those things may be questionable. Like, I don't know, we talked a lot about how to film violence, for instance. It was really on my mind while making the images of this film, and I'm kind of trying to find another way to show that than to show, bodies that are hurt, or to show blood, or to show misery, or to show all those things that people say they are used to see. And yeah, it was formally maybe something that is, you may be not really noticing it, but it's part of
Choices made.
choices
Yeah.
made. That it's true. It was for me important to think about it and to propose something else, to propose another way. Those guns are not obviously real guns, but you do believe that it is what it is, right? So it was all that research about how to convey
To convey that stuff and
those things without especially, trying to think about them at least, and try to give a poetic response in terms of images to those kind of stories.
yeah, and I think also this sense of like, because there is a lot of fed upness where there's so many times I watch a movie and I'm rolling my eyes. I'm like, oh, fuck. I was starting to believe it, and now I see Matt Damon. Or, like, it's some shit like that where you're like, fuck, man. But then Hollywood is averse to having faces you don't know. But I'm dying to see films with faces I don't know so that there's a better chance of me, like, investing sometimes. Like, there's so many things that are like faux pas according to industry and how to sell something. And it's not that we're not interested in selling something. We're like, no, people are interested in this too. We're starving for new experiences. Why no new experiences? Why no different experiences? We're actually hungry for it, And it's something I know well because I've lived a great deal of my life as a poet, which of course many people would say, well, that's impossible. What else do? You can't do that. And and I've had to have those conversations with whatever, whether they're publishers or booking agents. It's like, oh, no, people come out. People like poetry, actually. Like, people like poetry. And then, and then they go, wow, I didn't know people like poetry. It's like, how did you not know? It's ancient. Everybody has known. You just forgot. It's ancient, And so it's, that's the type of shit that we're like, we enjoy that dance, of we spent a lot of time, even now we feel like we're the protectors of the film. Like, on one hand, we want to share everything, and then on the other hand, we're like, we have to protect it, to make sure that it's shared, in the way that it is. So, yeah, thank you for the question. There was another one up there.
Up in the, do you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. perhaps I think the question is a bit about your collaborative process and how that went for the two of you to work together on such a film.
Well, first I wanted to respond to the designer remark that you did. Yeah, we worked with that amazing young Rwandan designer called Cédric Mizero, who did the production design, worked with his crew, built that village, and is just somebody that is out of this world. He's 25 years old.
Costumes, the jewelry,
jewelry, everything. And then with Tanya Melendez, who is
also known as Lady Soulfly.
Yeah, who is hair and makeup and who invented all those connections between, technology and future. So, yeah, about working together.
I mean, there's no way that this film could ever have even been thought up without the fusion of our worlds, So there is, there is how we met, and then there's everything that happened after that, And so from that moment forward, the collaborative spirit, also this project was conceived partially because we were looking for a way to work together, to fuse our imaginations, to do something together. And it changed. I mean, initially, I think I thought of Anisia as Neptune initially, and then I thought of myself as Madaluza, and then it was like, no, actually, we're writing and doing this. Would you shoot it, Anisia? I don't. I asked her to shoot it, and but she did.
The challenge was for me that at one point, well, the writing process was, as he said, like back and forth and exchanging ideas and him writing the music, finding the characters, the voices, proposing situations, and then me being like, we cannot film this.
How would that look on screen? What you have to think of the screen?
What you want to see. So that was more my my input in terms of the writing to see how that would be possible. You see, we went very far, so a lot is possible. And so then then he said, I want you to do the images. And so I was like, no, I don't know about that. But yeah, I went into 3 years of studies to be able to make the images. So I was already filming a little bit, but never. I never obviously directed the photography of a future film of that. So I studied for 3 years straight and did a lot of tests and all of those things in order to be able to execute technically and to be able to talk that language, which was new, while he was learning the language of writing a film and
simultaneously in the same space. So she's there learning, and I'm in another part of the house, and the music is banging, and the ideas, and you want to hear this? What if? But that would never work. What
I was finding responses in terms of light, in terms of space, in terms of movement, in terms of all those things, and so those were the challenges for for us is that we really like it's our first, you know. It's we yeah.
Another challenge separate from that, though, was then, because it was all challenges, right? Raising the money, every aspect of it, you know, guarding the story the way we want it to be told, the language we want it to be told, and all this stuff. When we finally are, you know, in the position to shoot in Rwanda, then comes the question of how are we going to have cinema lights and rails and all this stuff, because there's no cinema rental place in the country, and with our budget, you know, well, I'm just not sure. Like, can we afford? We either have to bring it from South Africa, Kenya. Someone's trying to get us to rent all the equipment from India. Another French company is suggesting we have it all flown in from France, and we're looking at what all these things cost, and we're like, we could use this to build it. And so then Anisia put together a group of engineers in Rwanda, and went to LED factory and all this stuff. And we built the cinema lights, we built the rails, we built the dolly, we built the Apple box, we built all this shit. Also thinking of all the other filmmakers and what have you that are there already. We're like, this is going to be useful, right? And so that's the sort of like thing that came with all the obstacles. It was always just like, well, let's dive in, you know. And so there were several obstacles along the way, but you know, they were all approached kind of like that.
I'm seeing hands. I'm not sure where we are at time, but I will happily take another question. I see a hand over here. Go ahead. So the question is about the character Innocent in the film, and if you can talk about the many complexities that that character holds in the film.
I think first off, you're drawn to Innocent because he's played by an extraordinary actor by the name of Dorsey Rugamba, who is an extraordinary actor, writer, and yeah, we were really lucky to have him in the film. So the character, well, the character of Innocent has a number of inspirations. His relationship with, there's a whole story, backstory between how Memory and Innocent were raised, or how they raised themselves, or with Frost, the bird, you know, and the choices that Memory made and the choices that Innocent made. And so, yes, at the end, she's not really defending him when she tells them he's not actually a soldier. He's ultramagnetic. And you can tell from their response that they all know who ultramagnetic is. And that's a part of the like to be continued aspect of things. But yeah, he's a complex character with a name that I encountered it for the first time, my first time in Rwanda, meeting people named Innocent. It was like, oh, okay, I hadn't considered that. And you know, and from there, it's a play on a number of, I guess, sort of the role, you know, because I'm really moved by the stuff that Memory says in relation to him, surrounding, the roles that men play, how men are socialized, and the idea of this character that has, gone to encounter the world and take part in a particular way, and on one hand may be enlightened or connected to something, like he understands his sister's world, but in another sense, he's driven or has been conditioned by something that he's been exposed to in relationship to manhood. And it's, so he poses interesting questions and a threat as a result of that. I don't know what else is to be said other than there's they have an interesting story, memory, and innocent, and then of course his role is ultramagnetic.
Yeah, to be continued for him, right? Yeah, it's in that sense that we have the feeling that it's an origin story, right? That all those characters have, more to say, and Innocent certainly has more to say. What interested me in that character is what it also gives to memory, to his sister. That I'm not sure that she's not, also complicit in a way somewhere. There is something about their relationship that is dangerous, that touched some dangerous part, and I think that complementarity is very interesting.
All right, one last hand.
Thank you so much for this film. It's a gift and it's gorgeous from top to bottom. My question is a bit of a greedy one. Any chance we'll get a soundtrack album?
Any chance we'll get a soundtrack album?
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, in fact, our wonderful sound designer, Blake Lee, is here in the house tonight. He flew in from New York to be here tonight, and we're actually in the process of putting together that soundtrack album right now. Also, our VFX and animation producer, Andreas Landau, is here, and I believe that we have a few animators or VFX people in the house with him. Hello. From the Victory Social Club. And that's
Album
it. But
coming.
definitely, that's not greedy. It's necessary.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you. Thank you,
so
Saul
much.
and Anisia.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining
Thank you all
us.
for being here. Thank you
Don't
for the
forget to
wonderful
vote.
questions.